The day you decide you don't want to be family, you got to have an asset that you can sell as you move on. What we buy you out. I'm just being realistic here, you guys.
The financial records just dropped, and they're absolutely wild. Christine Brown's explosive new memoir doesn't just spill family tea, it exposes a calculated $200,000 Vegas manipulation that will make your blood boil. We're talking about systematic financial abuse disguised as polygamous unity, and the receipts are devastating. Christine's book, Sister Wives, A Memoir of Faith, Family, and Finding Freedom hit Barnes & Noble shelves early. And buried in those 295 pages is a bombshell that changes everything we thought we knew about the Brown family's Vegas era. This isn't speculation anymore, ladies. This is documented betrayal with dollar signs attached.
I really just like me tons better not living with them.
Here's what actually happened. While Kody was on camera preaching about keeping the family together during those Vegas years, he was privately orchestrating the most manipulative cash grab in reality TV history. Christine reveals that Kody deliberately strung along Meri, herself, and Janelle, not out of love, not out of religious conviction, but because he was greedy and had a show to make money from. The Vegas move wasn't about family unity. It wasn't about fresh starts or better opportunities. It was about positioning 4 women as human ATMs while Kody and Robyn lived their actual married life in the shadows.
I loved the cul-de-sac. I felt like in the cul-de-sac, I was master over my own world.
Christine writes with devastating clarity that Kody would do just enough to woo them for a minute before pulling away again, keeping that hope alive just long enough to keep the cameras rolling and the money flowing. But here's the part that should terrify every woman who's ever trusted someone with their financial future. Christine alleges that Kody and Robyn specifically manipulated Meri into believing they had a chance of reconciling so they could steal the money from her Vegas home sale. We're talking about a woman's entire housing equity, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars being weaponized against her through emotional manipulation. The same pattern played out with Janelle, the so-called business-minded wife who handled family finances. Christine reveals that Kody was constantly trying to woo Janelle back, not because he missed her, but because he wanted access to her money. Every romantic gesture, every family meeting, every tearful conversation about working things out had a price tag attached.
I was a mom. I was confident in being a mom. I want to do whatever I want in my home.
And the most chilling part, Robyn was completely complicit. Christine makes it clear that Robyn was okay with this financial abuse because she was benefiting from it. While 3 women were being emotionally and financially drained, Robyn was living what Christine calls the biggest betrayal of all, a monogamous marriage funded by polygamous profits. This isn't just reality TV drama. Women, this is a masterclass in how financial predators operate, and it happened on national television while millions of viewers unknowingly watched 3 women fund their own exploitation. The show was nothing but an elaborate financial con game, and Christine just exposed every manipulative trick in their playbook. What we watched as Sister Wives wasn't reality, it was carefully orchestrated theater designed to milk maximum profit from genuine family trauma. Christine reveals the shocking behind-the-scenes machinery that made this deception possible. The Browns didn't just film family events, they pre-planned every storyline, scripted their responses, and then went through the motions on camera like actors hitting their marks. 1 week on filming, 1 week off, with Kody and Robyn spending their downtime coordinating what they'd say to maintain their profitable narrative. Here's where it gets absolutely infuriating. While the cameras were rolling, Christine, Meri, and Janelle were having real emotional breakdowns, experiencing genuine marital crisis, and processing actual betrayal. But Kody and Robyn were treating it like a business meeting, deciding which version of their coordinated story would generate the most viewer sympathy and keep those TLC paychecks coming. The fake conversations weren't even subtle once you know what to look for. Christine writes that when she and Kody had their breakup conversation on camera, they had already had that same conversation multiple times in private. Kody had already seen the moving boxes in her garage. He already knew he'd been moved out. But then he showed up on camera pretending to be shocked and devastated, playing the blindsided husband for the cameras, while Christine had to sit there and participate in this manufactured drama. Even worse was the family meeting where Christine announced she was leaving. She'd already called Meri and Janelle beforehand. She didn't want to blindside women who'd been part of her life for decades. But when the cameras rolled, Meri sat there acting shocked and annoyed, pretending it was brand new information. Christine watched that episode later and realized Meri was literally performing surprise betrayal for the audience. This is where the money manipulation gets truly sinister. Kody wasn't just stringing these women along emotionally, he was timing their hope cycles around filming schedules. He'd love bomb them just enough to keep them invested in the show, then withdraw his attention until the next season needed drama. Their actual pain became his profit margins. And all those times Kody claimed he couldn't travel to be with his children during medical emergencies, Christine reveals he was managing his image, not his finances. When he refused to go to Isabel's surgery, claiming he couldn't be away from family for 3 weeks, he was really calculating how his absence might look to viewers. Then when his other children showed up to support their sister because apparently they understood family loyalty better than their father, Kody got angry at them for making him look bad. The most heartbreaking part is realizing that while 3 women were pouring their hearts out on camera, sharing their most vulnerable moments with millions of strangers, Kody and Robyn were at home strategizing about how to spin those confessions for maximum audience retention. Every tear was content. Every breakdown was a potential storyline. Every attempt at healing was just another opportunity to reset the manipulation cycle for the next season. The money trail Christine reveals will make every woman who's ever balanced a household budget see red. We're not talking about normal marital financial disagreements. This was systematic wealth extraction disguised as polygamous principle, and the pattern is absolutely chilling. Christine drops the bombshell that exposes the entire Vegas operation. Kody manipulated each wife into funding his lifestyle while dangling reconciliation promises that he never intended to keep. This wasn't polygamy, this was a long-term financial scam with 4 victims and 2 perpetrators, and the dollar amounts involved will shock you. Here's how the con worked. Kody would cycle through his manipulation tactics depending on which wife had the most liquid assets at any given time. When Meri was sitting on her Vegas home equity, suddenly Kody and Robyn were interested in working things out with her. When Janelle had business income flowing, suddenly family meetings focused on her role as the financial backbone of the family. When Christine had her TLC earnings, suddenly there were conversations about recommitting to the family vision. But here's the part that should terrify every woman. These weren't random emotional swings. Christine reveals that Kody's attention followed the money with surgical precision. He would show up at Christine's house demanding dinner be ready at 6 sharp, the house spotless, the children on their best behavior, but only when he needed something from her. The moment her financial usefulness decreased, so did his interest in maintaining even the appearance of a marriage. The Vegas home sales become even more sinister when you realize the timing. Each wife was pressured to sell their Las Vegas properties under the guise of family unity and moving to Flagstaff, but Christine now reveals that Dayton's college plans were just convenient cover for a larger financial extraction scheme. The real goal was getting each woman's home equity into a position where Kody could access or influence how it was spent. Meri's situation was particularly predatory. According to Christine, Kody and Robyn specifically kept Meri believing there was hope for reconciliation, so they could manipulate her into turning over her home sale proceeds to family expenses that primarily benefited Kody and Robyn's household. We're talking about a woman's entire housing investment being weaponized against her through calculated emotional manipulation. The same pattern played out with Janelle, but with a business angle. As the wife who traditionally handled family finances, Janelle represented ongoing access to multiple income streams. Kody's periodic reconciliation attempts with Janelle weren't about missing her partnership. They were about maintaining access to her financial management skills and her independent income sources. Even Christine's own earnings weren't safe. She reveals that the money she earned from the show was dramatically less than what Kody and Robyn were receiving, creating a financial power imbalance that made it harder for her to leave even when she recognized the abuse. She was essentially funding her own exploitation while being told she wasn't contributing enough to deserve equal treatment. The psychological sophistication of this financial abuse is staggering. Kody didn't just take money, he made his wives grateful for the opportunity to give it to him, convinced them they were investing in family stability, and then punished them when they started questioning where their contributions were actually going. Meri's home sale betrayal represents the most calculated financial predation in the entire Brown family saga, and when you see the psychological tactics involved, you'll recognize a blueprint that financial abusers use everywhere. This wasn't just theft, it was emotional terrorism with a 6-figure price tag. Picture Meri's situation. She's been spiritually divorced from Kody for years, living essentially as a single woman while still legally tied to a family that treats her like an ATM with abandonment issues. Her Las Vegas home represents her only real financial independence, her escape route, her security blanket in a marriage that died years ago. And Kody and Robyn knew exactly how to weaponize that vulnerability. Christine reveals that the manipulation was surgical in its precision. Right when Meri needed to make decisions about her Vegas property, suddenly Kody and Robyn became interested in healing their relationship. Phone calls increased, family meeting invitations appeared. There were strategic mentions of working toward reconciliation, of Meri's important place in the family, of how much they valued her contributions over the years. But here's the sick psychology behind it. They weren't trying to rebuild a marriage, they were creating just enough emotional investment to influence Meri's financial decisions. Christine writes that Kody and Robyn manipulated Meri into believing they had a chance of getting back together, specifically so they could access the proceeds from her home sale. We're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars being stolen through systematic emotional manipulation. The timing reveals everything. These reconciliation conversations didn't happen randomly. They coincided perfectly with Meri's real estate decisions. When Meri needed to decide whether to invest her home equity back into the family or secure her own independent future, suddenly she was getting attention from a husband who had ignored her for years and a sister wife who had treated her like competition. Meri fell for it because any woman who's been emotionally starved will respond to sudden attention from the people she's been trying to please for decades. After years of being treated like she was disposable, here were Kody and Robyn acting like she mattered, like her opinion counted, like her presence was valued. Of course she wanted to believe it was real. But Christine saw through the performance because she was watching the same tactics being used on her and Janelle. The attention was strategic, conditional, and always seemed to intensify right around major financial decisions. When family members had money to contribute, suddenly their relationships with Kody improved. When their financial usefulness decreased, so did his interest in maintaining even basic courtesy. The cruelest part is how they made Meri complicit in her own financial exploitation. By framing the home sale proceeds as an investment in family healing, they convinced her that giving them access to her money was actually an act of love and commitment. She wasn't being robbed. She was being a good sister wife, a faithful family member, a woman willing to sacrifice for the greater good. And Robyn's role in this betrayal cuts deepest of all. As the wife who had supposedly learned to navigate Kody's moods, who positioned herself as the family translator and emotional mediator, Robyn had unprecedented influence over both Kody's decisions and Meri's hopes. She could have protected Meri. Instead, Christine alleges she helped orchestrate the deception. This is financial abuse at its most sophisticated, using hope as a weapon, love as leverage, and family loyalty as camouflage for theft. Janelle's financial exploitation reveals the most insidious layer of this entire scam, because she was supposedly the business-minded wife who should have seen it coming. But that's exactly why Kody targeted her. He knew her financial skills made her the perfect long-term cash cow, and he played her expertise against her emotions with devastating precision. For 20 years, Janelle had been the Brown family's financial backbone. She managed budgets, coordinated expenses, handled business decisions, and kept multiple households functioning on complex income streams. She was the wife who understood mortgage rates and tax implications, who could balance 4 families' needs against one shared income. She should have been the hardest to manipulate financially, but Kody knew exactly how to weaponize her competence against her. Every time Janelle started pulling away emotionally, suddenly there were urgent family financial meetings that required her expertise. Every time she began establishing independence, suddenly Kody needed her input on major financial decisions that affected everyone. He made her financial knowledge feel like a trap instead of a strength. Christine reveals that Kody's reconciliation attempts with Janelle followed the same calculated pattern as his manipulation of Meri, but with a business twist. When Janelle had independent income flowing, whether from real estate, business ventures, or her portion of TLC earnings, suddenly Kody was interested in reconnecting and rebuilding their partnership. When her financial contributions decreased, so did his attention. The psychological manipulation here is particularly cruel, because Janelle's identity was tied to being financially useful to the family. She'd spent decades proving her worth through budget management and business acumen. Kody exploited that pride by making her believe that staying financially connected to him was the same as staying valuable to the family structure. But here's where Christine's revelations get truly devastating. Janelle's financial expertise was being used to fund her own emotional abuse. While she was calculating how to make family budgets work, Kody was calculating how to extract maximum value from her contributions while giving her minimum emotional investment in return. Her competence became the weapon he used against her. The Vegas to Flagstaff move perfectly illustrates this manipulation. Janelle approached the relocation like the business decision-maker she was, analyzing costs, coordinating logistics, managing the financial complexity of moving 4 households across state lines. But Christine now reveals that the entire move was orchestrated around Dayton's college plans and Kody's desire to extract more money from all the wives' home sales. Janelle was essentially project managing her own financial exploitation. While she was busy making sure everyone's home sales and purchases aligned properly, Kody and Robyn were strategizing about how to access and control those sale proceeds. She was solving the logistical problems that made their financial manipulation possible. Even more insidious was how Kody used Janelle's financial knowledge to justify his demands on the other wives. When Christine or Meri questioned expensive purchases or budget allocations, Kody could point to Janelle's approval as validation. Janelle's expertise became a shield that protected his financial decisions from scrutiny, even when those decisions primarily benefited his household with Robyn. The aftermath reveals the true scope of this exploitation. When Janelle finally started prioritizing her own children's needs over family financial unity, when she began questioning why her contributions weren't translating into equal treatment for her kids, suddenly Kody's interest in her business partnership evaporated. The moment she stopped being a compliant financial resource, she became expendable. The Flagstaff deception unravels like the most calculated real estate scam you've ever seen, and when Christine exposes the real agenda behind that move, every woman who's ever been pressured into a major financial decision for the family will recognize the manipulation playbook. On the surface, the story sounded almost noble. Dayton, Robyn's son, wanted to attend college in Flagstaff, and the family needed to relocate to support his educational dreams. What loving stepfather wouldn't want to help his child pursue higher education? What devoted family wouldn't make sacrifices for one of their own? It was the perfect cover story for what Christine now reveals was a massive wealth extraction scheme. Here's the real timeline that Christine exposes. The Flagstaff move wasn't about Dayton's college opportunities. It was about forcing 4 women to liquidate their Vegas real estate simultaneously, so Kody could access and influence how those proceeds were reinvested. We're talking about potentially over $1 million in combined home equity being released at once, with Kody positioned to direct how that money flowed back into family investments. The genius of using Dayton's college as justification is that it made questioning the move seem heartless. What kind of family member would oppose a child's education? What kind of woman would prioritize her own housing stability over a teenager's future? By framing the financial upheaval as family sacrifice for educational opportunity, Kody made it nearly impossible for any of the wives to object without looking selfish. But Christine saw through the emotional manipulation because the numbers didn't add up. Moving 4 entire households from Las Vegas to Flagstaff, coordinating home sales, managing cross-state relocations, establishing new residences, cost exponentially more than simply supporting one college student's education expenses. If Dayton's schooling was the real priority, there were dozens of less disruptive ways to handle his college costs. The real agenda becomes crystal clear when you follow the money trail. Each wife was pressured to sell her Vegas property quickly, often at less than ideal market conditions, creating a sense of urgency that prevented careful financial planning. The simultaneous sales also meant none of them had time to research Flagstaff real estate thoroughly, making them dependent on Kody's guidance for their reinvestment decisions. And where was Kody directing those reinvestments? Primarily into property arrangements that benefited his lifestyle with Robyn, while leaving the other wives in increasingly precarious financial positions. Christine reveals that the property purchases in Flagstaff weren't designed to recreate the Vegas setup, where each wife had secure independent housing. Instead, they created a financial structure where Kody had more control over everyone's living situations. The psychological pressure was relentless. Any wife who hesitated about the Flagstaff move was framed as opposing Dayton's educational opportunities, being resistant to family unity, or prioritizing her own comfort over collective sacrifice. The emotional manipulation made it nearly impossible to raise practical financial concerns without seeming like a bad family member. Even the timeline was suspicious. The urgency around Dayton's college enrollment created artificial pressure to make major financial decisions quickly. There wasn't time for thorough research, careful planning, or independent financial advice. The wives had to trust Kody's guidance about Flagstaff real estate, property values, and investment strategies, exactly the position that made them most vulnerable to his manipulation. Christine's revelation that this was wealth extraction disguised as family support should send chills down every woman's spine. The most dangerous financial predators don't announce their intentions. They wrap their exploitation in narratives about love, sacrifice, and family commitment. Robyn's complicity in this financial manipulation destroys every narrative she's carefully crafted about being the innocent fourth wife who just wanted family harmony. Christine's revelations expose Robyn as the architect of emotional warfare, using her position as Kody's favorite to orchestrate systematic theft from her sister wives. The most chilling part of Christine's account isn't just that Robyn participated in the financial exploitation, it's how she weaponized fake concern to make it happen. While publicly positioning herself as the family mediator, the one who understood everyone's perspectives and wanted to help Kody treat all his wives fairly, Robyn was privately manipulating those very conversations to benefit herself financially. Christine writes with devastating clarity about how Robyn would claim she could speak Kody as if wives who'd been with him for decades needed a translator. But the translation was always one-directional. Robyn would influence Kody's behavior toward the other wives, gather intelligence from their interactions, then use that information to position herself more advantageously in financial decisions. Here's where Robyn's manipulation gets truly sinister. She made the other wives complicit in funding their own replacement. While Meri, Christine, and Janelle were contributing their home sale proceeds and TLC earnings to family expenses, Robyn was living an essentially monogamous marriage funded by polygamous profits. She got the husband, the financial security, and the lifestyle, while her sister wives got empty promises and dwindling bank accounts. The intelligence gathering was systematic and cruel. Christine reveals that her conversations with Robyn during filming would get twisted and reported back to Kody, often with deliberate misrepresentations that made Christine look bad. Every confidence Christine shared, every moment of vulnerability, every attempt at sister-wife bonding became ammunition that Robyn used to turn Kody against her. But Robyn's masterstroke was making this betrayal look altruistic. She positioned her interference in Kody's other relationships as trying to help him be a better husband to everyone. She framed her intelligence gathering as concern for family harmony. She presented her financial manipulation as wanting to make sure everyone was treated fairly. The gaslighting was so sophisticated that even Christine initially believed Robyn was trying to help. The money aspect reveals Robyn's true priorities with brutal clarity. Christine alleges that Robyn was completely okay with the financial abuse of the other wives because she was benefiting from it. While Meri was being manipulated out of her home sale proceeds, while Janelle was being used as a financial manager for her own exploitation, while Christine was earning less from the show despite being a central figure, Robyn was living the lifestyle that their combined contributions made possible. Even worse, Robyn actively participated in stringing the other wives along with false hope, specifically to maintain access to their financial contributions. Christine reveals that what she and Kody were doing wasn't polygamy at all. It was a monogamous marriage funded by 3 women who were being deceived into believing they still had a chance at reconciliation. The cruelest irony is that Robyn never actually lived polygamy herself. She got exclusive access to Kody's time, attention, and affection, while her sister wives got occasional visits designed to keep them financially invested. She experienced marriage while they experienced exploitation, but their money funded her security. Christine's revelation that Robyn truly never lived polygamy because she and Kody were just stringing the others along to live a lavish life represents the ultimate betrayal. Robyn got to play house with a devoted husband while Meri, Christine, and Janelle funded that fantasy through their own emotional and financial devastation. This isn't just about money. It's about using sisterhood as camouflage for theft, weaponizing female relationships to enable financial abuse, and turning the very concept of plural marriage into a sophisticated con game. The fame addiction factor reveals the most disturbing truth of all. Kody's desperate need to maintain his reality TV income transformed him from a flawed husband into a full-blown financial predator who would sacrifice his own children's well-being for camera time and cash flow. Christine exposes how Kody's relationship with fame became a toxic feedback loop that made him increasingly dangerous to everyone around him. Once the TLC paycheck started flowing and he tasted celebrity, every family decision became filtered through one question: how will this affect the show? Not how will this affect my wives? Not how will this affect my children? But how will this impact my ability to keep making money from our family trauma? The psychological transformation Christine describes should terrify anyone who's watched someone they love become obsessed with external validation. Kody became addicted to reading comments about himself online, getting genuinely angry when viewers criticized his behavior, and increasingly paranoid about which family members were making him look bad to the audience. His ego became completely dependent on public perception, but instead of improving his behavior, he decided to control his family's responses. Here's where the fame addiction became abusive. Kody started using loyalty tests to determine which wives and children supported his public image versus which ones were making him look bad. If Christine complained about their marriage on the show, Kody would punish her and her children by withdrawing his attention entirely. If the kids didn't perform happiness for the cameras, Kody would blame their mothers for not managing the family image properly. Christine reveals that Kody began using language he'd never used before. Words like covenant and agreement, as if his wives had entered a contract where his word was law and their job was protecting his reputation. The religious framework became a weapon to enforce compliance with his image management demands rather than a spiritual foundation for family relationships. The most heartbreaking example Christine shares is Isabel's surgery situation. When Kody Kody refused to travel to New Jersey for his daughter's medical procedure, claiming he couldn't be away from his family for 3 weeks. He was really calculating how his absence might look to viewers. But when Hunter and Aspen showed up to support their sister because they actually understood family loyalty, Kody got angry at them for making him look bad by comparison. Think about the psychological damage here. Kody was more concerned about his public image than his child's medical crisis, then became angry when his other children displayed the parental love he couldn't be bothered to show. The fame addiction had completely corrupted his ability to prioritize his actual responsibilities as a father and husband. The financial incentive made everything worse because each wife's emotional pain translated directly into content value. Their genuine marital struggles, their real heartbreak, their authentic attempts at healing, all of it became raw material for storylines that generated revenue. Kody had a financial incentive to keep his wives just unhappy enough to create drama, but just hopeful enough to stay on the show. Christine's revelation that arguments would be recreated for cameras proves how calculated this exploitation became. Their real breakup conversation happened multiple times in private, but then had to be performed again for TLC's cameras. Their authentic family conflicts were repackaged as content, with everyone expected to hit their emotional marks on cue for the sake of Kody's paycheck. The greed became so consuming that Kody was willing to move his entire family across state lines, disrupt 4 households, and manipulate his wives out of hundreds of thousands in home equity just to keep the show interesting. The Flagstaff move wasn't about family needs, it was about creating new storylines that would justify continued TLC contracts. Most disturbing of all is how the fame addiction made Kody increasingly abusive, as he became more desperate to maintain control over his money-making machine. When wives started questioning the financial arrangements or demanding more equitable treatment, Kody's response wasn't to examine his behavior, it was to become more manipulative, more controlling, more willing to sacrifice anyone who threatened his revenue stream. Christine's wake-up call represents the moment when a woman finally sees the price tag on her own dignity, and her decision to stop funding her own abuse should inspire every woman who's ever felt trapped by someone else's financial manipulation. The turning point wasn't dramatic, it was exhaustingly practical. Christine realized she was paying money to be treated badly, contributing her earnings to a system that deliberately kept her miserable and subsidizing a lifestyle for Kody and Robyn while her own children watched their mother being systematically devalued. The math finally didn't make sense, even from an emotional investment standpoint. Christine describes the moment she got tired of monitoring her words, tired of playing the game, tired of having to perform gratitude for scraps of attention that she was literally paying for through her TLC earnings. She was funding her own emotional terrorism while being told she wasn't contributing enough to deserve basic respect. The absurdity became impossible to ignore. The financial reality check was brutal, but clarifying. Christine was earning dramatically less from the show than Kody and Robyn, despite being a central figure in storylines that generated millions of viewers. She was performing her most vulnerable moments for audiences while receiving a smaller percentage of the profits than the man who was using her. She was literally paying for the privilege of being humiliated on national television. But the deeper realization was even more devastating. She was teaching her children that love requires financial sacrifice, that family loyalty means accepting abuse, and that women should be grateful for whatever attention they can buy. Her daughters were watching their mother fund her own mistreatment and learning that this was what marriage looked like. Her sons were learning that this was how men could treat women who loved them. Christine's decision to leave wasn't just about ending her marriage, it was about refusing to participate in the narrative that her pain was profitable content. She wasn't going to pretend anymore that there might be reconciliation, just so Kody could keep milking their marital problems for TLC paychecks. She wasn't going to coordinate fake conversations for cameras while her real emotional needs went completely unmet. The courage it took to walk away from that financial manipulation cannot be overstated. Christine was leaving not just a husband, but an entire economic system that had been designed around her participation. The show needed her willingness to be vulnerable, needed her tears and hopes and disappointments to generate viewer engagement. Without wives who were willing to perform their heartbreak, Kody's money machine would collapse. Christine's refusal to continue funding the fantasy that she and Kody might work things out destroyed the entire financial model that had been exploiting her for years. No more home sale proceeds flowing into family accounts controlled by Kody. No more TLC earnings going toward lifestyle expenses that primarily benefited his relationship with Robyn. No more emotional labor performed for cameras while receiving no actual relationship investment in return. The liberation in her decision is profound. Christine chose her own financial independence over the false security of contributing to a system that would never prioritize her well-being. She decided that being financially responsible for herself was preferable to being financially exploited by someone who claimed to love her. But perhaps most powerfully, Christine's departure exposed the whole operation for what it really was. Once she stopped playing her assigned role in Kody's money-making narrative, the artificial nature of the entire setup became impossible to hide. Without a wife who was willing to perform hope and heartbreak on command, the show's central premise that this was a family working through challenges together completely collapsed. Christine's wake-up call should resonate with every woman who's ever funded her own mistreatment. Sometimes the most radical act of self-love is simply refusing to pay for abuse anymore. Sometimes the biggest threat to a financial predator is a woman who decides her peace is worth more than their profit margins. The empire crumbles when the foundation of exploitation finally gives way, and the legal implications of Christine's financial revelations could reshape how we understand economic abuse within plural marriage arrangements forever. What Christine has documented isn't just reality TV drama, it's potential evidence of systematic financial fraud that exploited religious beliefs and family structures to transfer wealth from multiple women to a single couple. Legal experts who specialize in financial abuse cases recognize these patterns: the isolation, the manufactured urgency around major financial decisions, the emotional manipulation timed to coincide with property sales, and the deliberate creation of financial dependence disguised as family unity. The civil implications alone are staggering. If Christine's allegations about the manipulation of Meri's home sale proceeds are accurate, we're looking at potential claims for financial elder abuse, undue influence, and conversion of assets. When someone uses emotional manipulation to influence another person's financial decisions for their own benefit, especially within a relationship of trust and dependency, that crosses the line from moral failure into legal liability. The timeline Christine provides creates what lawyers call a paper trail of intent. The coordinated attention that coincided with each wife's major financial decisions, the strategic reconciliation attempts that aligned with property sales, the manufactured family emergencies that required immediate cash contributions. All of this establishes a pattern of deliberate financial exploitation rather than random marital dysfunction. But the most significant legal exposure might come from the show itself. If TLC earnings were distributed unequally while all parties were contributing equally to the content creation, if wives were pressured to perform emotional labor for cameras while receiving disproportionately small compensation, if the financial arrangements were misrepresented to cast members, these could constitute breach of contract, fraudulent inducement, or even employment law violations. The IRS implications deserve attention too. When income from joint ventures like reality TV shows gets distributed unequally, when family members contribute to shared expenses but don't receive corresponding tax benefits, when property transfers happen under emotional duress rather than fair market transactions, tax authorities tend to take notice, especially when the amounts involved reach six figures. For the remaining Brown family dynamics, Christine's financial expose creates a domino effect that makes future exploitation nearly impossible. Meri and Janelle now have a documented playbook of exactly how their emotions and finances were manipulated. They can see the patterns, recognize the tactics, and protect themselves from future attempts to access their resources through false reconciliation promises. The most devastating impact might be on Kody and Robyn's ability to maintain their lifestyle. The entire financial model depended on having multiple women contributing to shared expenses, while only one couple received the primary benefits. With Christine gone and her allegations public, that model becomes unsustainable, both practically and legally. Future TLC negotiations will also be complicated by Christine's revelations about unequal compensation and manufactured storylines. Reality TV contracts typically include provisions about authentic representation and fair compensation for all participants. If the network was aware that storylines were being fabricated and earnings distributed unequally, their own legal exposure could be significant. But perhaps the most important legal implication is preventive. Christine's courage in documenting and exposing this financial manipulation creates a roadmap for other women to recognize economic abuse within their own relationships. Her detailed account of how financial predators use religious authority, family loyalty, and emotional manipulation to access women's resources could literally save other families from similar exploitation. The sister wives community that once rallied around the Browns' television representation is now processing the reality that their idealized version of plural marriage was actually an elaborate financial con game. That disillusionment creates space for honest conversations about how economic abuse operates within religious communities and what legal protections might be necessary. So here we stand, watching the aftermath of what happens when a woman decides her dignity is worth more than someone else's profit margins. Christine's financial revelations don't just expose one family's dysfunction, they illuminate how sophisticated financial predators operate, and why their victims' courage to speak up literally protects other women from similar exploitation. What do you think will happen when Meri and Janelle realize the full scope of how their trust and money were manipulated? And which legal consequence has you hoping Christine gets the justice she deserves? Tap like, hit subscribe, keep notifications on for all the updates, as this financial fraud story continues to unravel. A fresh video is already queued up, and something tells me the next round of legal revelations will be even more explosive than Christine's book bombshells.